Imagine a structure so colossal it spans the entire circumference of the planet, hidden beneath miles of crushing dark water. We were told the ocean floor was a graveyard of silent stone, yet the data from Google Earth reveals a geometric scar that defies every law of plate tectonics. This is not a glitch in the software. This is a monument of engineering that the military has spent decades trying to erase from your screen. The wall is real, and it is active. The map of our world is a lie. For decades, we have trusted the digital representations of our oceans, believing that the blue expanse on our screens was a faithful reflection of reality. But there is a secret hidden in plain sight, a massive structure that follows the very spine of our planet. This is the story of the 180th Meridian, a place where geography ends and an impossible architecture begins. When you open Google Earth and navigate to the center of the Pacific Ocean, you encounter a line. To the untrained eye, it looks like a simple seam in the imagery. The official explanation from big tech corporations is always the same. They claim these are stitching artifacts. They tell us that because the Earth is a sphere being represented on a flat digital plane, the edges of satellite photos do not always align perfectly. They want you to believe that what you are seeing is a digital error, a ghost in the machine. But shadows do not exist in digital errors. If you look closely at the coordinates 0 degrees 0 minutes north, 180 degrees 0 minutes east, the truth becomes undeniable. This is not a flat line of mismatched pixels. It is a physical ridge with measurable height and depth. Using multi-beam sonar data, independent researchers have calculated that this structure rises over 3,000 feet from the abyssal plain. It maintains a constant width of exactly 2 miles for thousands of kilometers. Nature does not work in perfectly straight lines over such distances. In geology, we have what are called mid-ocean ridges. These are places where the tectonic plates pull apart and magma rises to create new crust. These natural formations are jagged, irregular, and chaotic. They follow the path of least resistance. But the structure at the 180th meridian ignores the terrain. It crosses over mountain ranges. It descends into the deepest trenches. It maintains its perfect geometry regardless of the pressure or the composition of the sea floor. There are reports from commercial fishing vessels and deep-sea cable layers that have encountered something the Navy does not want to discuss. In the late 1990s, a cable-laying ship near the Fiji Islands reported a massive sonar reflection that did not correspond to any known seamount. When they lowered their equipment to investigate, the sonar signal became distorted, as if the object they were approaching was absorbing the sound waves rather than reflecting them. Shortly after the incident, the crew was visited by a naval liaison and told that their data was classified under a maritime security protocol. Their logs were erased. This leads us to the second point of interest, thousands of miles away, in the Atlantic. We travel to the coordinates 31 degrees 15 minutes 15 seconds north, 24 degrees 15 minutes 30 seconds west. Here off the coast of the Canary Islands lies the most famous evidence of artificiality on the ocean floor. It is known as the Atlantic Grid. For years, people called this the ruins of Atlantis. It is a perfect series of interconnected lines that resemble a modern city layout the size of Wales. Again, the official narrative was quick to respond. They claimed these were sonar tracks from ships. They said the lines were created by the very boats mapping the area. But this explanation fails the most basic test of logic. If these are sonar tracks, why do they have vertical relief? Why are there shadows on the sea floor that correspond to the position of the sun? The grid is not a city. When analyzed alongside the 180th meridian wall, a terrifying pattern emerges. These grids are located at specific intervals along the main structure. They are not residential areas. They appear to be technical nodes. In engineering terms, they look like circuit boards or reinforcement points for a planetary scale system. The most disturbing evidence is not just what we can see, but what is being taken away from us. If you monitor these coordinates over time, you will notice something strange. Google Earth updates its imagery frequently, but in these specific locations, the resolution is actually getting worse. Areas that were clearly visible in the year 2008 are now blurred or covered by low-resolution blue patches. This is real-time censorship. We are watching the military-industrial complex edit the physical history of our planet in the digital realm. In the year 2024, A group of independent oceanographers attempted to crowdfund a private expedition to drone map a section of the 180th meridian. Within 48 hours of announcing their target coordinates, their funding platform was frozen for a violation of terms of service. Why would the movement of private citizens in international waters be a threat to a tech corporation? The answer is simple. The nature of this wall is not geological. It is a structure that emits a constant, low-frequency pulse, a frequency of 7.5 Hz. This is the same resonance we discussed in our previous investigation regarding the abandoned oceans. Nature does not use rules. Nature does not use right angles. And nature certainly does not censor itself. Someone else built this. And the Navy is not just watching the wall. They are protecting it. They are making sure that the geometry of silence remains unbroken. To understand why this structure is not a product of nature, we must look at how it interacts with sound. In the deep ocean, light is a luxury, but sound is everything. The military relies on sonar to map the abyss, sending pulses of acoustic energy that bounce off the sea floor and return to the surface. When these pulses hit natural basalt or volcanic rock, they produce a sharp, predictable echo. This is the foundation of bathymetry. However, when naval vessels scan the 180th meridian, the laws of physics seem to change. In 1988, during a classified mapping mission conducted by the Office of Naval Intelligence, technicians noticed a terrifying anomaly. As their sonar arrays passed over the structure, the return signal did not just weaken. It vanished. They called this an anechoic signature. In the world of submarine warfare, anechoic tiles are used to coat the hulls of elite stealth vessels. These tiles are designed to absorb sonar waves, turning a massive machine into a ghost. But we are not talking about a submarine. We are talking about a vertical wall that rises thousands of feet from the mud. If this structure were made of stone, it would be the loudest reflection on the radar. Instead, it swallows the sound. It is a planetary scale stealth coating. This suggests that the wall was not just built to exist, but to remain invisible to the very technology we use to find it. This silence is not empty. It is a frequency. Independent data miners have cross-referenced naval acoustic logs with the 1978 CSAT mission. They found that the wall acts as a massive conductor for a constant signal of 7.5 Hz. This is nearly identical to the Schumann resonance, the natural electromagnetic heartbeat of the Earth. By mimicking the frequency of the planet itself, the wall hides its own energy signature from our sensors. It is a 19,000-mile antenna, vibrating with a purpose we are only beginning to understand. The most chilling evidence of this technology comes from a declassified event in 1992. A high-speed attack submarine was conducting deep-water maneuvers near the Chromatic Trench, a region where the wall is particularly prominent. The mission was to test the limits of new ultra-low frequency sensors. As the submarine approached within 5 miles of the wall's coordinates, the crew reported a sudden and total electronic failure. It was not a mechanical break. It was a pulse. Every digital screen on the vessel turned to static. The internal navigation systems began to spin wildly, indicating that the submarine was in a location that did not exist. For 45 minutes, the crew was blind in the dark, floating near a structure that was effectively an electromagnetic fortress. When the power finally returned, the sonar recorded a final, massive sound. It was not a rock slide or a tectonic shift. It was a mechanical hum that vibrated through the hull of the submarine, a sound so deep it could be felt in the bones of the sailors. The Navy officially reported the incident as a localized geomagnetic storm, but the internal logs tell a different story. They found that the wall had responded to the submarine's active sonar. The wall was not just standing there, it was defending itself. We have spent decades asking what the wall is made of, but we have ignored the most important question. Why is it there? If you build a barrier that spans the entire globe, you are not protecting a border. You are establishing a perimeter. The deeper we look into the declassified files of Project Mohole and the original bathymetric surveys, the more evident it becomes. The wall is not an obstacle for us. It is a containment system for something else. The geometry of the 180th meridian is not a simple geographical marker. It is a containment system of planetary proportions. To understand the true purpose of the wall, we must stop looking at it as a defensive line built for humanity and start looking at it as a prison built for something else. We are not being kept away from the deep ocean. Something in the deep ocean is being kept away from us. This is the foundation of the biological containment theory, a protocol that the world governments have managed to keep under absolute secrecy since the end of the Second World War. Throughout history, we have assumed that the vastness of the sea was enough to isolate prehistoric or dangerous life forms. We believe that the crushing pressure and the freezing temperatures of the abyss were natural bars for any ancient predator. But the declassified logs from the Office of Naval Intelligence and the early deep-sea surveys of the 1950s suggest a different, more terrifying reality. The natural environment was not enough. The wall is a biological Faraday cage, designed to suppress the movement of organisms that rely on electroreception and electromagnetic sensing to navigate the dark. If you can disrupt the frequency of the water, you create an invisible, impenetrable barrier that no apex predator can cross without total neurological collapse. But a cage is only as strong as its structural and energetic integrity. And for the last decade, the data indicates that the cage is vibrating. The most terrifying evidence of this failure comes from the deep-sea hydrophones operated by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, also known as NOAA. While the general public is told that strange acoustic anomalies like the bloop or the Julia signal are merely ice quakes or tectonic movements, the raw acoustic data tells a story of deliberate intent. In 1995, high-sensitivity sensors placed near the South Pacific section of the wall captured a series of low-frequency sounds that have never been explained by any natural phenomenon. These were not the random groans of shifting ice or the chaotic crumbling of tectonic plates. These were rhythmic, high-impact strikes. Imagine the sound of a massive object hitting a solid steel door, but scaled to the size of a mountain. These rhythmic thuds occurred with mathematical precision every 10 seconds for over 3 hours. The acoustic triangulation showed that the origin of the sound was always on the side of the wall that remains unmapped and blurred on our satellites. It did not sound like an animal calling for a mate. It sounded like a massive biological entity testing the structural limits of the barrier. It sounded like something was trying to find a weak point in the geometry. It sounded like something was trying to get out. This leads us to the final and most protected piece of the puzzle, the Antarctic connection. For decades, the public has wondered why the Antarctic Treaty is the most strictly enforced international agreement in history. We are told that it is to protect the pristine environment and to ensure scientific cooperation. But why is free travel to the interior of the ice continent prohibited for private citizens? Why are military satellites constantly monitoring the perimeter of the frozen desert with thermal and ground-penetrating radar? The answer lies at the coordinates -79.9705, -81.9616. At this precise location, the oceanic wall leaves the dark water and enters the land. This is the entry port. This is the junction. In Antarctica, the wall is not hidden by 3 miles of crushing ocean water. It is a physical, tangible structure that cuts through the mountains of the Queen Maud Land, appearing as a geometric ridge that defies the natural erosion of the ice. This is where the military maintains the primary resonance emitters that keep the 7.5 Hz signal active across the entire planetary network. The Antarctic exclusion zone exists because this is the only place on Earth where a human being could theoretically touch the wall and understand its true nature. It is not a natural mountain range made of granite and basalt. It is a technical terminal. It is the control room for the global cage. When the Navy tells us they are protecting the Antarctic environment, they are actually protecting the integrity of the prison walls. They are ensuring that no one witnesses the maintenance of the frequency emitters. But there is a problem that no treaty can hide. The 7.5 Hz signal is no longer stable. Since the year 2022, the amplitude of the signal has increased by 40%, as if the system is struggling to compensate for a massive internal pressure. The rhythmic thuds recorded by the hydrophones are no longer isolated incidents. They are becoming a constant background noise in the deep Pacific. The reason NASA stopped exploring the ocean was not because they ran out of curiosity. It was because they found the fence, and they realized that the fence was starting to buckle. We have been living in a period of artificial peace, protected by a wall we did not build, maintained by a military that is terrified of what lies on the other side. The silence of the abyss is being replaced by the sound of a countdown. The biological leak has already begun, and the Navy is no longer just watching the wall. They are preparing for the moment the door finally breaks. The stability of our modern world is not a product of natural balance or the peaceful evolution of a planet in equilibrium. It is the artificial result of a managed environment, a planetary-scale containment field that we have only recently begun to understand through leaked data and discarded naval logs. But the field is no longer holding. For over 80 years, the 180th Meridian Wall has stood as a silent, invisible sentinel, acting as the ultimate barrier between our civilization and the horrors of the ancient deep. However, the data from the last 24 months indicates that we are approaching a catastrophic and irreversible failure. This is the stage of a great collapse, the moment when the architecture of secrecy finally crumbles under the weight of what lies beneath. The first signs of this systemic failure were not found in the wall itself, but in the thermal behavior of the global ocean. In the field of professional oceanography, temperature stability in the abyssal zone is considered an absolute law. At depths below 6,000 feet, the water temperature remains a steady and unwavering 2 degrees Celsius. It has been this way for thousands of years, unaffected by the changing seasons of the surface. But in the early months of the year 2024, thermal sensors located near the Chromatic Trench and the Tonga Ridge began to record impossible fluctuations that defy every thermal model known to science. The temperature did not just rise, it spiked with violent intensity. In less than 48 hours, the deep water temperature in a localized area of the South Pacific jumped from 2 degrees to 12 degrees Celsius. This is a massive energy release that cannot be explained by any underwater volcanic event or tectonic friction. The heat signature is consistent with a thermal bleed from a massive power source that is struggling to maintain its containment field. The ocean is literally boiling from the bottom up in specific sectors along the 180th meridian. This is the heat of a machine failing. This is the friction of a cage that is being pushed to its breaking point by something of unimaginable mass. As the heat rises, the biological network of the planet is beginning to fracture in a way that is now visible to the naked eye. We must look at the erratic and desperate migration patterns of deep-sea species that have remained unchanged for millennia. We are now seeing apex predators like the great white shark and the massive blunt-nosed six-gill shark suddenly appearing in shallow coastal waters where they have no biological reason to be. These animals are not looking for food, they are fleeing. They are the first refugees of a silent war that is happening in the darkness of the trenches. We are also seeing the tragic arrival of giant squids and other elusive cephalopods washing up on the beaches of Australia and South America. When marine biologists examine these specimens, they find internal injuries that are not caused by predators or nets. They find ruptured organs and internal hemorrhaging that suggests these creatures were hit by a massive acoustic shockwave. These are the victims of the wall's defense mechanisms. As the geometry of the abyss changes and the containment field fluctuates, the biological species that have lived in the shadow of the wall are being caught in the crossfire of an electromagnetic battle. They are being pushed out of the deep because the deep is no longer a place of safety. This leads us to the terrifying reality of the signal itself. As we have established in previous chapters, the wall is not just a static barrier of metal or stone, it is an active conductor of a constant 7.5 Hz frequency. This specific resonance acts as a planetary sedative, a neurological suppressor that keeps the ancient organisms on the other side in a state of metabolic dormancy. It is quite literally the hum of a planetary cradle designed to keep a monster in a state of perpetual sleep. But the signal is no longer a steady heartbeat. According to intercepted naval telemetry from the year 2025, the constant pulse has become irregular and chaotic. It is no longer a steady beat that harmonizes with the Earth's resonance. It has become a staccato of high-intensity bursts followed by agonizing minutes of absolute silence. This is the sound of a battery dying. This is the sound of a gate losing its lock. If a 7.5 Hz signal stops for even an hour, the sedative effect is lost. The cradle stops rocking, and the inhabitants of the cellar begin to wake up. We must connect this failure to the disturbing events we documented regarding the disappearance of 10 billion crabs in the Bering Sea and the strange mass deaths of whales along the Atlantic coast. The official scientific community claimed these were population collapses due to climate change and rising surface temperatures. But the internal military logs tell a different story. The crabs and the whales did not simply die, they were harvested. They were the biological fuel for a failing system. Whenever the frequency of the wall begins to drop below a critical threshold, the containment system requires a massive influx of biological energy to recalibrate the frequency and reset the field. We are witnessing a planetary-scale maintenance protocol that demands a sacrifice of life to keep the silence. The disappearance of entire species is the hidden price we pay to keep the wall active and the monsters asleep. But the scale of the recent disappearances suggests that the harvest is no longer enough to satisfy the machine. The system is starving, and the wall is losing its grip on the abyss. The fissures in the grid are now large enough to be detected by commercial sonar systems. Near the coordinates of the 180th meridian, there are now massive gaps in the seafloor relief that appear as black voids on the radar. These are not natural geological trenches. These are ruptures in the artificial crust of the planet. Through these fissures, the deep-sea hydrophones of the global surveillance network are capturing a new and horrifying sound. It is no longer the rhythmic thuds of something trying to find an exit. It is a sustained multi-tonal frequency that resonates through the very crust of the Earth. The Navy calls this the awakening protocol. It is a sound that has not been heard on this planet for millions of years. It is a sound of recognition. The Wall of 4chan is not a piece of internet fiction or a ghost story for the digital age. It is the last line of defense for the human species against a reality that is too dark to comprehend. For centuries, we have lived with the comfortable illusion of being at the top of the food chain, the masters of the land and the sky. We never realized that we were merely the occupants of a small courtyard, while the cellar beneath our feet was full of entities that date back to the birth of the oceans. The military-industrial complex is not hiding the wall because they want to hoard a secret technology for profit. They are hiding it because they are paralyzed by fear. They know that if the general public understands that our entire civilization depends on a failing frequency emitter at the bottom of the ocean, the panic would destroy society overnight. They are trying to patch a dam that is already breaking with every tide. Every time Google Earth blurs a coordinate, every time a private research vessel is intercepted and turned away from the Antarctic exclusion zone, they are buying us one more hour of blissful ignorance. But the time of ignorance is coming to an end. The 7.5 Hz signal is fading into a low, mechanical growl that no longer suppresses the nervous systems of the deep. The thermal bleeds are turning the abyss into a boiling cauldron of primal energy. And the creatures that were meant to be extinct, the predators that shaped the nightmares and the legends of our ancestors, are feeling the bars of their cage dissolve into the salt water. The ocean is not a place of wonder and discovery. It is a managed territory under a state of permanent emergency. And the management has finally lost control. When the final frequency stops, and the geometry of the silence is finally broken, we will realize that the deep sea was never ours to explore. It was a door we should have never approached. The wall is falling. The harvest of the oceans has failed to sustain the cage. And the awakening will not be a slow process. It will be a sudden, violent reintroduction to the true owners of this planet. The wall was not built to keep us out of the mystery. It was built to keep them in the dark. And now, the light is turning on. This is the end of the geometry of silence. Prepare for the dawn of the abyss, because they are no longer kicking at the door. They have found the key, and they are finally coming home. The collapse of the wall is not an isolated event. It is the final stage of a sequence that began decades ago. As the 7.5 Hz signal weakens, the ancient frequencies of the abyss are returning. To truly understand the gravity of what is happening, you must look at the data we recovered from the 7,000-meter mark. While the wall was built to keep the predators in, something else was sent from the depths to test our resolve. We have documented the exact acoustic recording that forced the military to abandon the ocean forever. The signal at 7,000 meters was not a distress call. It was a warning that the wall was about to fall. If you want to see the evidence that the Navy tried to bury before the Great Collapse, click on the video appearing on your screen right now.